It was late past midnight, and the air was thick with the stillness of the highway. The moon hung low, barely illuminating the road as Sarah stood by the shoulder, her thumb out. The small town she'd been passing through had offered nothing but closed gas stations and vacant motels, and now she was stuck, with no cars in sight for miles. She'd been on the road for hours, trying to get back home after a visit to her sister's. The bus had broken down in the middle of nowhere, and she'd made the decision to hitchhike the rest of the way. She wasn't too worried after all. She'd hitched before, but tonight felt different. The quiet, the emptiness, it gnawed at her. Then, in the distance, headlights appeared. She felt a twinge of relief. The car slowed as it neared, coming to a stop beside her. The driver, a man with a sharp jawline and dark sunglasses, smiled from behind the wheel. His eyes were hidden, but something in his grin seemed wrong, too wide, almost too eager. "You need a ride?" His voice was smooth, calm, but it had an unsettling edge to it. Sarah hesitated. She'd always been cautious about accepting rides from strangers, but she was exhausted, and the thought of another few hours of walking seemed unbearable. "Yeah, thank you," she said, opening the passenger door and sliding into the seat. The car smelled faintly of pine and something else metallic. She tried not to think about it as she buckled her seatbelt. "Where are you headed?" he asked, his eyes still hidden behind the sunglasses. "Just south. About 20 miles, she replied, forcing a smile. He nodded, and the car pulled back onto the road, the tires humming against the asphalt. The interior was dimly lit by a single flickering overhead light. Sarah glanced around, trying to distract herself from the gnawing sense of unease that had settled in her chest. "You're traveling alone?" he asked, his voice now sounding more like a soft whisper. "Yeah, just me," she said, glancing at him briefly. He hadn't taken off his sunglasses, not even once. The car suddenly swerved, jerking to the right, and Sarah grabbed the seat to steady herself. "Sorry," the driver said quickly, his smile widening, too wide for comfort. "Just a bit tired, you know." She nodded, but felt a wave of dread wash over her. Something wasn't right, but she didn't know what. Minutes passed in eerie silence. Sarah tried to keep calm, focusing on the road ahead, but then she noticed something strange, a shadow in the rearview mirror. It wasn't her reflection. The shape was wrong. It flickered, moved as if it were alive. She blinked, and it was gone. Maybe she was just imagining things, she thought. But then it happened again. The shadow was back, stretching unnaturally long across the back seat. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The driver didn't answer right away. His hands tightened on the wheel, and his grin grew wider, more grotesque. "You know, you shouldn't be here," he said, his voice suddenly low and dangerous. "You shouldn't have gotten in." Her heart raced. "What do you mean?" He laughed, but it was hollow, empty. "You shouldn't have trusted me." The air inside the car grew cold, and Sarah's breath fogged in front of her. Panic clawed at her chest as the shadow in the mirror grew longer, twisting unnaturally. She could hear a faint whisper now, a voice that seemed to come from all directions. "Get out." "Stop the car," she demanded, her voice cracking. "I want to get out." The driver's grin faded, replaced by something darker, more sinister. Slowly, he turned to face her, his eyes still hidden behind the sunglasses. "You can't leave," he said softly, almost sadly. "You're already here." Suddenly, the car swerved again, this time nearly off the road. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Her fingers fumbled for the door handle. She didn't care about anything else. She just needed to get out. With a sharp yank, the door opened, and Sarah stumbled out into the dark, cold night. She didn't look back as she ran, the sound of the car's engine roaring behind her, almost like a growl. The road stretched out in front of her, endless and unforgiving. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she sprinted, the only sound the pounding of her feet on the dirt road. But as she ran, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. That someone was still following her, just out of sight. And then a voice far too close whispered in her ear, "Welcome back." The ground beneath her feet gave way, and the world went black. It was a cold, rainy night when Daniel spotted the hitchhiker on the side of the road. The man stood beneath the dim glow of a flickering streetlight. His hood pulled up, obscuring most of his face. His hand was raised in that universal gesture, thumb out, waiting for a ride. Daniel hesitated. He wasn't usually the type to pick up strangers, but the storm was getting worse, and the nearest town was miles away. He slowed his car and rolled down the passenger window. "Where are you headed?" Daniel asked. The hitchhiker didn't answer right away. A low rumble of thunder shook the sky. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, the man said, "Anywhere but here." Something about his tone sent a shiver down Daniel's spine. But before he could change his mind, the man opened the door and slid inside. The smell hit Daniel first, something damp and earthy, like wet leaves and decay. He tried not to gag as he pulled back onto the road. They drove in silence for several minutes. The hitchhiker kept his hood up, his face turned slightly away, watching the rain streak across the window. "What's your name?" Daniel asked, trying to break the tension. Another pause. Then, "James." "All right, James. You got family waiting for you somewhere?" "No." Daniel nodded, unsure of what else to say. Something about James felt off. The way he barely moved, the way his breath was too slow, too measured. The way his clothes seemed damp, as if he had been standing in the rain for far too long. The road stretched on, dark and endless. No other cars, no signs of life. Then Daniel saw it. A figure standing on the side of the road just ahead. Another hitchhiker. His blood ran cold. It was James. The exact same hooded figure standing under another flickering streetlight, his hand raised in that same silent gesture. Daniel's eyes darted to the passenger seat. James was still there, still unmoving. His mouth was dry. His hands gripped the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Who is that?" he whispered. James slowly turned his head toward Daniel. This time, his hood fell back slightly, revealing a face that was not quite human pale, too smooth, the eyes dark voids that seemed to pull at reality itself. "That's where I was before you picked me up," James said, his voice a hollow echo. "And that's where I'll be after you drop me off." Daniel slammed his foot on the gas, speeding past the second James. He didn't dare look back. The storm raged on. The road stretched ahead. And beside him, James only smiled. Jason had been driving for hours, the highway stretching endlessly into the dark. His gas gauge dipped dangerously close to empty, and the nearest town was still miles away. The road was desolate, no other cars, no signs of life. Just the occasional dead tree, twisted and skeletal, illuminated by his high beams. Then he saw him. A hitchhiker. The man stood on the side of the road, perfectly still, his thumb raised. His face was obscured by the low brim of a hat, his clothes old and tattered. Jason hesitated. He knew the rules never pick up hitchhikers, but the guilt gnawed at him. It was the middle of the night, and the guy had nowhere to go. With a sigh, Jason pulled over. The hitchhiker moved slowly, unnaturally, as if he had been standing there for hours without shifting. He opened the passenger door and slid inside. "Thanks," the man murmured. His voice was dry, cracked, like old paper being torn apart. Jason forced a smile. No problem. Where you headed? The man didn't answer right away. He just stared ahead, his face still partially hidden by the hat's shadow. Anywhere, he finally whispered. Jason swallowed hard. Something about the way he said it sent a chill crawling down his spine. They drove in silence for a long time. The air in the car felt wrong. Thick. Heavy. The longer Jason drove, the harder it became to breathe. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel. The hitchhiker hadn't moved at all since getting in. Not a shift, not a breath. Jason glanced at him and froze. The hitchhiker's hat was gone, but there was no head beneath it. The thing sitting in his passenger seat had no face. Just smooth, featureless flesh stretching over where eyes, a nose, and a mouth should have been. Jason slammed his foot on the gas, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The hitchhiker turned toward him. Even without eyes, Jason knew it was looking at him. "You should not have stopped," the thing whispered. Jason screamed. The car skidded wildly as he lost control, the tires screeching against the pavement. He felt the world tilt, the sky and the ground twisting together as the car flipped. Darkness. When Jason awoke, everything was silent. The car was upside down, the windshield shattered. His body ached. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. Then he heard it. A voice. "You should not have stopped." Jason's blood ran cold. Through the broken windshield, he saw the hitchhiker standing on the road, completely unharmed. And then, there were more. Dozens of them. Faceless figures lined the highway, standing in eerie, unmoving silence. And then, as one, they all raised their thumbs. Jason tried to scream, but his voice was lost to the night. Jack had been driving all night, pushing his rusted old sedan down an endless stretch of highway. It was the kind of road that didn't have a name, just a cracked, lonely path cutting through miles of dead fields. His gas was running low. His eyelids were heavy. Then he saw her. A hitchhiker, standing by the road, illuminated in the wash of his high beams. She wasn't dressed for the cold, a thin white dress, dirty at the hem. No shoes. Her arms hung limp at her sides, and her head was tilted just slightly, as if she was listening to something he couldn't hear. Jack's gut twisted, but the road had been empty for hours. He couldn't just leave her out here. He pulled over. The girl didn't move at first. Then, slowly, like something was guiding her, she stepped toward the car. Jack leaned over and pushed open the passenger door. "Need a lift?" She slid in, silent. The door clicked shut behind her. "Where you headed?" Jack asked, forcing a smile. The girl turned her head toward him, her eyes dark, unreadable. Her lips barely moved. "Just drive." Jack swallowed. The air in the car felt heavier now. He turned back to the road, gripping the wheel, and pressed the gas. They drove in silence for miles. The radio buzzed with static. Jack kept glancing at the girl. Her hands were clasped in her lap, fingers twitching slightly. Then he saw her mouth moving. She was whispering something. At first, he thought it was to herself. Then he realized she was repeating his address, his full address, the one he hadn't spoken out loud. Jack's skin went ice cold. "How do you?" Her head snapped toward him so fast, he heard the joints in her neck crack. "You shouldn't have stopped." The radio let out a high-pitched screech. Jack slammed the volume down, his heart pounding. The headlights flickered. Then, the smell hit him. Rot. Wet earth. Something long dead. A scraping sound filled the car. Soft at first. Then louder. Jack's breath came in ragged gasps. He didn't want to look, but his eyes darted to the rearview mirror. There was something in the back seat. At first, it was just a shape. A shifting, writhing shadow. But then, long, pale fingers reached around the girl's shoulders. Something was sitting behind her. Jack's stomach lurched. The fingers curled, nails too long pressing into her dress. And then, a voice, right against his ear. "Keep driving," Jack screamed. He yanked the wheel, the car veering violently off the road. The tires skidded over dirt, the world spinning, flipping. Darkness. When he woke up, the car was upside down. His head was bleeding, his vision blurry. He tried to move, but something was wrong. He wasn't in the driver's seat anymore. He was in the passenger seat. The girl sat beside him. The engine rumbled. The car was running. And someone else was behind the wheel. A man with a torn, rotting face. A man who looked just like him. The girl turned, smiling too wide, her teeth sharp and black. "We told you not to stop." The car rolled forward into the dark. Jake had been hitchhiking for years, and he thought he'd seen it all: drunks, weirdos, even a guy who wouldn't stop muttering to himself. But nothing compared to the ride he caught on that cold October night. He'd been walking along a deserted highway for hours, his thumb growing numb from the chill. When the old rusted sedan finally pulled over, he didn't hesitate. The driver, an older man with deep-set eyes and a sunken face, grinned at him. "Long night?" the man asked as Jake climbed in. "You have no idea," Jake muttered, rubbing his hands together for warmth. The inside of the car smelled strange, metallic, like rust or blood. The dashboard was cluttered with crumpled fast food wrappers, but beneath them, Jake could make out deep, dark stains on the seats. "Headed?" the driver asked. "Closest town," Jake said, suddenly uneasy. The man grinned wider, showing teeth too small for his mouth. "Sure thing." They drove in silence for a while. The only sound was the hum of the tires against the cracked pavement. Then Jake noticed something strange. There was no road noise. No wind, no rumble of passing cars. Just an unnatural, suffocating silence. And then he saw it. The rear-view mirror. Jake had barely glanced at it before, but now something was off. His own reflection was there, but behind him, in the back seat, was a figure. A woman. Her face was sunken, her eyes wide and milky. Her mouth was open, but no sound came out. Her fingers, long and bony, reached toward him. Jake whipped around, but the back seat was empty. His heart pounded. He turned back to the mirror. She was still there. The driver let out a low chuckle. "You see her, don't you?" Jake's blood ran cold. "What the hell is this?" The man licked his lips. "She's not the first, and you won't be the last." Jake's hands fumbled for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The lock clicked down by itself. The car sped up. Jake turned to the driver, panic gripping his chest. "Let me out." The man shook his head, his grin widening. "She was a hitchhiker too, you know?" Jake looked back at the mirror. The woman was closer now, her face twisted in a silent scream. Her fingers brushed his shoulder. And then darkness. The next morning, the old sedan sat abandoned on the side of the road. The driver was gone. And in the back seat, where no one had been before, sat a new passenger. A young man, his eyes wide and milky, mouth frozen in a silent scream, waiting for the next hitchhiker. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed these chilling stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more spine-tingling content. Stay tuned for more eerie tales and haunting visuals. Until next time, stay safe and stay scared.